Welcome back to day 33 of our Lenten Bible study on the Gospel of Mark. We have now journeyed right from the time Jesus burst out onto the scene, and we are in Mark chapter 14, that is the day of Jesus' crucifixion. The Jewish day starts on the evening at 6 in the evening and ends the next day at 6 in the evening as per our time. In the 14th day of Nisan, the afternoon, the Passover lambs have been sacrificed in the temple. And then Jesus celebrates the Passover with his disciples. At the Passover, he institutes the Lord's Supper. And there, while celebrating the Lord's Supper, he drinks the 3 cups of wine. The fourth cup he has not yet drunk. He will drink it when he enters into the kingdom. And there we are. Okay, let's read Mark chapter 14, verses 26. When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Before completing the Passover meal, we will now see that Jesus and his disciples will move into the Mount of Olives, will walk to the Mount of Olives, and from here on, we'll be able to see a comparison between human action and divine action. The human action will be betrayal, will be pride, will be fear, would be sin, would be anxiety. But the divine action, that is the action of Jesus, will be worship, will be obedience, will be providence, and will be redemption. We will be very tempted to think that the cross is because of human betrayal, but in reality, the cross is because Jesus accepted the divine plan of the Father. The way Jesus goes into his agony is something that we need to learn. They sing the hymns, the great Hallel, that is Psalm 113 to Psalm 118. These are the traditional Passover hymns. And we see that Jesus will sing these hymns as he goes into his passion. He's not going into his passion out of defeat, but he's going into his passion in worship and in obedience. This is a great learning for all of us. When there is something difficult happening in our lives, we should enter into those situations through praise and through obedience. That is exactly what Jesus did. Jesus goes into his passion, not crying and cribbing, but he will go into his passion after singing hymns of praise, after celebrating the Passover. We have the Eucharistic celebration, and you're going into something difficult. Go celebrate the Eucharist with the Lord. Be there with the Lord, and then go into the challenging situation. Okay, next verse number 27. And Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered." Now, Jesus is referring back to Zechariah 13:17, where it says, "I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered." So, Jesus will identify himself here as the shepherd and his disciples as the sheep. Now, who is this I that will strike the shepherd? The I that will strike the shepherd is of divine origin. And so now back to the question, is the crucifixion of human origin or is it a divine plan? You see, the crucifixion is something evil that was created, that was thought of by human beings. However, God is able to bring forth good from the worst of evil, and therefore God is able to bring forth good, is able to bring forth our redemption from the worst evil that is ever possible. And so we see over here that it is God's plan. It is God's plan that God will enter into humanity. He will enter into our mess. He will suffer because of our mess. And from our mess, He will bring redemption. You see, the disciples here are also scattered. They will leave and they will run. And this is a situation that you and I will face on a consistent basis in our spiritual lives. Our spiritual lives are not a straight incline towards God. We go up, we fall, we go up, we fall, we go up, we fall. The goal is not to give up. We can fall because of inconsistency in our prayer. We can fall because we've decided, we want to do something that is evil, not because it is evil, but because we think it is good for us. Take, for example, gossip, lying. These are simple things. Gluttony. We do these things over and over again, and so our spiritual lives go up and they fall, and they go up and they fall. But the good news is this, that Jesus is the shepherd. He will be crucified, but he will return to take us back. Okay, let's go ahead. Verse number 28. After I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee. The shepherd, though crucified, will return. The scattering of the sheep, the scattering of our lives is not the end. It is sad, it is difficult, it is painful, but it is not final. Why? Because the shepherd will have the final say. And Jesus says, I will go ahead of you to Galilee. So he's telling them to go to Galilee. And why Galilee? Because it marks the origin of their discipleship. They were called in Galilee. This is the ultimate return to mission and to grace. And so that is a wonderful learning for us as well. Every time we are scattered in our lives, return back where? Return back to the place where we encounter the Lord. Return back to the sacraments. Return back to the Eucharist. Return back to the confessional. Return to our Galilees, the place where we encountered the Lord. Return back to our mission. And the shepherd is there waiting for us to shepherd us, to lead us, and to guide us. What a loving Savior we have. Okay, verse number 29. Peter said to him, "Even though all become deserters, I will not." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this day, this very night, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." But he said vehemently, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all of them said the same. Here we can see Peter's love and we can see Peter's pride. In his love, he doesn't want to leave Jesus. He wants to be with Jesus. He wants to go everywhere with Jesus. But we also see Peter's pride over here. And the way he says, no, possibly pointing his finger, he's telling Jesus, Jesus, if all these disciples will deny you now, I will continue to be with you. And we see that his pride leads to his downfall. Even though he is emphatic in his claim, his ability to follow Jesus, at least according to him, is based on his strength, on his self reliance. This shows how quickly one can fall in pride. We see the greatest fall comes after the greatest self reliance. It's also a great learning for all of us that our ability to follow Christ is not based on our strength, is not based on our self reliance, is not based on all that we can do, but our ability to follow God is based on us spending time with Him, receiving His grace, and then following Him. See, the Lord does it like this. He says, "You want to follow me? I will give you grace." And when we follow Him, He gives us all the more grace. He blesses us so that we may follow Him. And when we follow Him, He blesses us all the more. Why? Because the heart of Jesus, because the heart of the Father, because the heart of the Spirit is to bless, to bless, to bless, to bless. And so He continues blessing us. We cannot follow the Lord without His blessing. We cannot follow the Lord without His grace. And no matter how good we think we are, without our daily prayer, we are not following Him. We are full of pride if we think we are. Okay, next verse. Verse 32. Then He came to a place called Gethsemane, and He said to His disciples, "Sit here while I pray." The name Gethsemane means oil press. It is literally a garden where olives are crushed to produce oil. Now we can take a spiritual insight from this, and it is this. This is the place where Christ is internally pressed in anguish. It is now here that in the Garden of Gethsemane that Jesus' passion will begin. It is not yet external, but it is internal. And the struggle is this, to say to the Father, "Father, I will do your will." We will see two comparisons now. One of Adam in the garden and one of Jesus in the garden. Adam in the garden, his posture was disobedience. He said to the Father, "Not your will, but my will be done." But we see Jesus. Jesus is again in the garden, and in the garden at Gethsemane, his posture is submission. He says to the Father, "Not my will, Father, but your will be done." And we see the result. The result of Adam's disobedience is the beginning of the fall. But the result of Jesus' submission and Jesus' obedience is the beginning of redemption. Through Adam, human disobedience began in the garden. Through Jesus, human redemption will begin in the garden. Through Adam, our hearts were torn away from the presence of God in the garden. Through Jesus, once again, our hearts will be restored to the presence of God in the garden. And so we see the beauty of Jesus here. Jesus is able to flip what we have done. He's able to take our brokenness, take it through human suffering, to take it through human evil and bring it to the goodness and the beauty of the love of God. Okay, next verse, and very quickly. Here we will see the full humanity of Jesus on display. Have you gone through suffering? You remember those days of pain and anguish. You remember those days of anxiety. You remember those days of great confusion. Jesus is going through exactly the same thing. He has this great anxiety. He says, "I am deeply grieved even unto death." We can see his real, raw emotional suffering here. But in the midst of it, there is also a theological lesson that we can learn. And that is this: true faith does not erase emotional struggle. If you're going through an emotional crisis, it does not mean that you do not have faith or your faith is weak. But it is here that our faith will show us how to respond in the midst of our struggle. Jesus will tell his disciples something very important here. He will say, "Remain here and keep awake." Now, this is a great lesson for us. In the midst of all our confusion, Jesus says the same thing to us: remain here and keep awake. You are going through suffering, Jesus says, remain here and keep awake. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, Jesus says, remain with me, keep awake. Jesus is, you're going through a situation in your life where you've done everything that you could have done, but nothing seems to work out. Jesus saying to you, remain here, keep awake, stay with me, stay with me, stay with the Lord in the sacraments, stay with the Lord in the Eucharist, stay with the Lord in your daily prayer. Prayer is not always about doing, it is about being with the Lord. That's the instructions he gives to his disciples, and he gives to you and to me. Okay, quickly, next. Verse number 36. He said, Our Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but you want. Here we will see Jesus surrendering. Very often we ask, how do we surrender? And we think that surrender is to tell Jesus, Jesus, you take everything. That is the first step. In fact, the first step is to address your desire to the Father. And Jesus does that. He tells the Father, Lord, Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Now that you've said that, you've expressed your desire to the Lord, the next step is to tell the Lord, Lord, now I will entrust this to you. And very often we reach this step. We tell the Father, Father, this is my will, but I now entrust it into your hands. But there is a third step. And the third step is to actively choose what God wants of you, whether it might be your job, whether it might be your children, whether it might be your family, whether it might be your illness out of everything else, whether it might be the work that you're called to do. It might not be the work that you like, but to surrender is to give to the Lord, say to the Lord, this is my will, you take it, Lord, but whatever your will, I will do it, and I will do it with joy. And you will see Jesus go in with authority and confidence into his agony. Okay, next step. We have the sleeping disciples, the failure of the flesh. It says, the spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. 3 times Jesus will come to them and ask them to pray, and 3 times he finds them asleep. Now we all know that they betray Jesus, and this is the reason. They don't keep awake, they don't pray, they are not sitting with the Lord. And so when the temptation comes, when the trial comes, they are not vigilant, their souls are not ready. And the same thing with us, right? When we don't sit with the Lord, when we don't pray, when temptations come, our souls are not yet ready to handle it, and then we fall into it. Okay, last few verses of this passage. Verse number 41. The hour has come, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. This is what happens when you spend time in prayer. We'll see a comparison of Jesus earlier and a comparison of Jesus now. Earlier, we see his internal agony. He's distressed and troubled. He's sorrowful unto death. He's falling to the ground. He's pleading for this cup to pass. But now, once he's met the Lord, once he's surrendered to the Lord, once he's accepted the will of the Father, there's no more anguished language. There is zero hesitation. There's a deliberate movement towards the betrayal. He's not running away from it. Now we see this dramatic shift. Jesus is freely embracing his passion. We see salvation is not achieved through human effort, is not achieved through all the things that we can do, but salvation is achieved because Christ obediently accepts the passion that he is supposed to go through. Salvation is got for us, is earned for us because Christ obediently accepted the Father's will. And that leads to the betrayal and the arrest of Jesus. Verse 43. Immediately while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him there was a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard. This is one of the most painful details in the Bible. The kiss is a sign of love, but love is absent. The kiss is meant to show affection and compassion, but here the kiss is used for betrayal, for condemnation, will be used for death. The form of love remains, but the heart is gone. What also remains is the correct language of discipleship when he calls him rabbi, but it is devoid of reality, is devoid of love. And it's an important warning because sin frequently hides itself behind the language of love and loyalty and religion. Even holy things can be misused when love is absent. Take, for example, lust. What is lust? Lust is a perversion of love. We can even abuse the ones we love lustfully. when love is absent. We can use them for self gratification. We can use the other. Take pornography. What is pornography? Pornography is the perversion of love. It is lust, that we use the body of the other for gratification. And this is what we see also. To take it one step ahead, to make it worse, these people come to arrest the Prince of Peace with clubs and with sticks. They come to arrest him like they're arresting a criminal. Jesus is not taken by force. He is not overpowered, but Jesus will surrender himself to the will of the Father. We should pray, Lord, help us to surrender to the will of the Father the way you surrendered. Difficult? Of course, very, very difficult. Possible? Yes, but only through the grace of God. Okay, the last two verses, 51 and 52. A certain young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked. Now, this is one of the most mysterious details of the text. We don't know who this man is. Some scholars, they say historically this possibly might have been Mark himself. Mark, who also runs away. And by writing this, he is putting a subtle signature of his authorship in the text. However, St. Ambrose interprets this beautifully. He talks about this boy or this man who's wearing only a linen cloth, and he's caught. He is caught by the guards, and he runs away, leaving the linen cloth in possibly in the hands of the guards, and he runs away naked without any dignity. And St. Ambrose says, when humanity abandons Christ, it loses its dignity. When you and I abandon Christ, our dignity, our identity comes from Christ. The moment the world has abandoned Christ, we begin to lose our dignity. We begin to forget who we are, the children of God. And when we forget we are children of God, sin grabs hold of us, and it takes away our linen cloth. It takes away from us our joy. It takes away from us our peace. It takes away from us our glory. And that joy, that love, that peace is the dignity that God gives to us. Okay, with this we come to the end of our study of the day. Tomorrow we shall complete Mark chapter 14. So please continue reading and rereading Mark chapter 14, especially as we go through these last few days, reaching the Holy Week. And till I see you again tomorrow, God bless you. I'm praying for you, and please pray for me and my team.